mute. I will mute everyone. We're not that busy today. So, and Sarah, probably the same with your Pilates. Does your teacher mute everyone?
Yes.
Yes. So as you know, just press the space bar if you do need to ask me something. But hopefully,
Cara, before I go, or I'm muted.
I turn you off.
I'm still. I don't know if you noticed last week I was very lopsided. I've still got knee problems. She says it's something. I've spoken to the doctor, but if I'm looking lopsided, I'm just avoiding this knee.
Okay. Okay. Have you got some extra padding?
I can do most things. It's just
Yeah.
pigeony movements.
Okay. Have you got any extra padding, or is it not really being on hands and knees? Does that bother?
That's okay. It's only anything moving that way. So even sitting cross-legged, but just, it's not a problem, but just so that you know if I'm looking weird.
Yeah, we're going to do a little bit of sort of pinwheel, but not a huge amount.
But I'll probably be all right, as I'll just work around it.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. So yes, I was thinking Monday morning, maybe we're all feeling a bit lively, maybe we're not. We're going to start in standing. So feet hip width apart and parallel. And bringing your hands into prayer pose in front of your chest. And I suppose just taking a moment to arrive in standing. I'm sorry, the Monday morning bin lorry is going down my road. It will not be long. So taking a moment to arrive, you can look at your feet. So I always find it helpful to look at my feet. And then to maybe do a little bit of rocking or swaying from side to side. Because what we're doing is starting to try to feel our feet, to feel ourselves in standing. So a little bit of swaying to the right and to the left. I'm sorry, the bin lorry won't be long. So a little bit of swaying to the right and to the left. And then from here, you're going to let a breath come in. And as you exhale, you're going to take your arms down and then up. You're going to do a little bit of reaching up into one arm and then the other. And as you reach, you can shift your weight. So I'm shifting my weight into my reaching side. And a couple more times, reaching up. And then from here, we're going to go down into a forward bend, but keep it really easy. So from here, when you come forwards, you might want to start bending your knees and resting your elbows on your thighs. And letting your head go, so that you check that your lower back is comfortable. And if this feels all fine, you could then release your arms to the floor. Now make sure your knees can be as bent as you like. So yeah, if your back feels fine, you can release your arms to the floor. Yeah, that's nice. Keep your weight in your heels. Good. And just have a breath or two here. And then on an exhalation, you're going to roll back up into standing. So if your back is feeling a little bit fragile, walk your hands up your legs. Lovely. The bin lorry's gone, so we can relax. And coming back into standing. And then in standing, we're now going to swing. That's it. Swing our arms. Let the whole body come along. So not to fall over there. Let your feet move. Good. So everything is coming along with this really easy, sort of loose, free, swinging twist. And even though we're starting in standing, we're trying to take things quite easy. So we're not pushing ourselves. We're just really thinking about how can we ease out tension in standing, getting ourselves moving in a mindful, gentle way. Okay, a couple more times, swinging our arms. Because then we're going to come to some twisty movements where we're not moving the pelvis. So we're trying to fix a part of our body. So come back into standing. Again, look at your feet. And then for a moment, bring your hands onto your pelvis. So just feel the rim of your pelvis under your hands. We're going to not move the pelvis. Try not to move the pelvis. And bring your hands up higher now onto your low ribs. And then see, can you turn a little bit to the right and to the left, but not moving below the waist? So it's going to feel quite unnatural. But when we do twists like this is when we really start to move our ribs and the spine between the shoulder blades. You could move on to bringing your fingertips to your shoulders. That's it. So bring your fingertips to your shoulders, have your elbows out to the side, and carry on turning to the right and to the left from the waist up. Good. And then carry on, bring your fingertips onto the crown of your head and keep turning a couple more times to the right and to the left. Good. And then let that all go. Come back to the first one, swinging your arms. That's it, letting everything move, which feels so much more natural, maybe more enjoyable. And this actually is really good for releasing tension from the shoulders, letting the arms go a bit. You know, because most of us, and I know some of you in particular, this is a challenging place, but most of us experience a certain degree of tension in the shoulders, perhaps from overusing the arms. Okay, a couple more times. Just checking what we're doing now. Yes, and then coming back again to touching your hands in prayer pose in front of you. So come back to settling down, have a look at your footprints on the floor, feet hip width apart and parallel, hands touching in prayer pose. Maybe have a moment closing your eyes, letting your shoulders drop, letting your elbows be heavy. See if you can feel the movement of the breath in your body. Feeling a breath coming in, feeling a breath leave you. Maybe one more time, feeling a breath come in, feeling a breath leave you. And then opening your eyes, and as you exhale, you're going to take your arms down and then up. Good, drop your shoulders and then come back to this reaching one, where we're reaching into one arm and we're shifting our weight into the reaching arm leg. And just all the time, keep these movements comfortable. So in this, as we reach and we shift our weight into the reaching arm leg, we feel length through that side of the body. And again, from here, we're going to sweep down into a forward bend. And remember, you can bring your elbows to your thighs. So whenever you're ready, sweeping down into a forward bend. If it's better for your back to pause with your elbows on your thighs, then do so. Otherwise, go all the way down, release your arms to the floor. See how the back of your legs feel. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. Good. Very nice. So maybe have another cycle of breath in your forward bend. And then as you exhale, sinking into your heels, rolling back up into standing. And this time when you come up into standing, just give your arms, well, your legs in particular, but also your arms a little bit of a shake out. Good. And then settle your feet back down again, hip width apart and parallel. And as you breathe in, take your arms wide out to the sides. Good. And as you exhale, you're going to give yourself a hug with your right arm on top. And if you have your right arm on top, it just means you don't have to worry about which arm you have on top. Good. And let your shoulders drop. Now, could you do that little turning movement again, where you're not moving your pelvis? So from the waist up, you're turning a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left. Good. And then stay where you are, but we're going to come on into eagle arms. Now, Sarah, do you know this one where you come, so you bring the back of your hands so they're touching, and then the bottom hand comes towards your face so you touch your palms. And drop your shoulders and just see how this feels. Now, we're going to take this one into a forward bend. But if it's a bit much for your arms, you can release your arms before we go forwards. Now, take your feet a bit wider apart, so your feet are the width of the narrow edge of your mat. You can bend your knees as much as you like, and then as you exhale, folding forwards. And at any point you can release your arms and let them hang down to the floor, or rest your elbows on your thighs. But if you like to have your arms in eagle arms, you can keep them like that for a breath or two. Yes, so it's a choice here. And yes, and again, if you've gone into the forward bend and your arms are in eagle arms, then after you've had a couple of breaths, release your arms down to the floor. Feel your weight is really clearly in your heels. Yes, and aditi in the outer edges of your feet a bit more as well. And then let a breath come in. And as you exhale, sink into your heels, roll up into standing again. And again, you could walk your hands up the front of your thighs if you need to. So arriving and standing, keep your feet wide still, because we're going to do these side lengthening movements. Yeah, so we take one arm up and the other arm is heavy and slides down our thigh. And so again, as with the other movement where we took our arm up, your weight shifts into the side where you're reaching up, and the other arm's heavy and floppy. So just perhaps a couple more times to each side. I never know when to stop with these ones. So going from side to side, a couple more times, feeling the length through one side of the body. The other side of the body is shorter, and this bottom arm is heavy and relaxed. Okay, this might be the last, the last side. Good. And then come back to the center. Give your legs a little shake out, and then settle back in standing, Tadasana, so your feet are hip width apart. So this is why we're going to come onto the other side of eagle, breathing in, taking your arms wide. This is why I told you which arm to have on top. So as you exhale, give yourself a hug with your left arm on top, because otherwise it was quite a long time to remember. And again, you could just do that little bit of turning. So leaving your pelvis facing forwards, turning your shoulders to the right and to the left. Good. And then again, pausing in the middle. So we've got one elbow in the crook of the other elbow, and this bottom hand comes towards our face and touches onto the other hand. Yes, and then we step our feet wider apart, so as wide as the narrow edge of the mat. And then on an exhalation, you can fold forwards. You can obviously release your arms if you want to, or keep them in eagle arms. Sink into your heels, bend your knees as much as you like. And just going into your forward bend. So your arms can be in eagle arms, or you can release your arms down to the floor. Let your head go. Keep your weight well in your heels. Let the knees soften and bend. Good. Just maybe have another cycle of breath there. If you haven't let your arms go, do so. And then as the next breath leaves you, sink into your heels, roll up into standing. But keep your feet wide apart. So just like we did on the other side, we'll come back into these side lengthening movements. One arm comes up, we shift our weight into that leg. The other arm is heavy and floppy. So we go a little bit from side to side, lengthening out through one side, lengthening out through the other. Good. And then, yes, I always forget whether I've sort of balanced myself out, but as long as we go from side to side a few times, I think that's fine. And then give your feet a shake out. And we're actually going to do a little bit of work with our feet. So come back into having your feet hip width apart. And we're going to let's work with our right foot first. So the first thing you're going to do is roll onto the outer edge of your right foot and see how that feels. So just roll onto the outer edge of the right foot and then bring your foot back onto the floor. So the sole of your foot is down on the floor. So a couple more times, rolling onto that outer edge of your right foot. Good. Then you're going to bring your right foot a little bit further forwards. And you're going to start to tap the front of your foot on the floor. And you can also, I've got my hands on my pelvis so that you can also tap your foot in a little bit of a quarter or a third of a circle. And if you keep your pelvis facing forwards, this movement then works into the hip joint as well. This is quite strong work here on the front of the ankle, so we won't do too much of that. Otherwise it starts to get a bit achy. Bring the foot back in underneath your pelvis. Come up onto the ball of that foot. And now you're going to roll across the ball of your foot. So this is where, my foot can feel really stiff and clunky and sound really clunky. So just, it's a bit of a massage as we roll across the ball of the foot. And we try and iron out some of those clunky bits. I think I could be here all day ironing out the clunky bits. But perhaps we've got a little bit more mobility in the foot from that. And then finally, come back to the first movement, rolling onto the outer edge of your foot and seeing how that feels. And what I normally feel from doing these is my foot and my ankle just feel a bit more mobile, which feels good, a bit softer perhaps. And then before we do the other side, settle both feet on the floor and close your eyes for a moment and just see how your feet feel. You could rock your weight a little bit from side to side, but we've got one foot we've worked and one foot we haven't worked. So just see, how do your feet feel in your awareness? And that's going to be very different for all of us, but I'm my right foot, the one we've just worked, feels bigger and sort of spongier in a way, which feels quite nice. So let's go on to the second foot now. So start by rolling onto the outer edge of your left foot and see how that feels. So I always find in contrast it feels really stiff and creaky. So a few more times, rolling from the footprint being on the floor to the outer edge of your left foot. Good. And then slide that foot a bit further forwards on the floor and start to tap your foot on the floor. And then this is where you might have your hands on your hips, because you can then tap your foot in this little semicircle. Third of a circle, maybe more than a semicircle. And then before that gets too much in the front of the ankle, we'll let it go. We'll bring the foot back under our pelvis. We'll come up onto the ball of the foot again. And then try and roll across the ball of your foot from the base of the big toe to the base of the little toe. And again, this is about getting into those sort of clicky, clunky, tight places. See how that feels a couple more times. Very nice, okay. And then bring that foot back onto the floor, and then the last thing we do is to roll onto the outer edge of the foot again. And so you've probably guessed by now that we are going to do a few standing balances. So this is why we've been working on our feet. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do some sort of, I suppose, little versions of the standing balances, and then we're going to do some other things and then come back to standing and maybe go a bit further with them. So nothing too scary to start with. So settle down with your feet now. Actually, maybe give your feet a shake out first. It's like you're trying to shake your foot off the end of the ankle. So it's so much easier to balance when we don't think about balancing. We think we're shaking our foot. And then come and settle down with your feet hip width apart and parallel. I'm going to turn side on just because you're going to see me a little bit better. So what I'd like you to do here is just choose which foot you're going to stand on first. So it doesn't matter, maybe close your eyes and let your weight rock a little bit from side to side, and just see if you feel more drawn to standing on one foot. And if you don't, you'll just have to make a choice. And then you're going to open your eyes. It's helpful to focus the gaze on a point in front of you, a steady point. And you're going to start to shift your weight onto the foot you're standing on and come up onto the ball of the other foot. And then you're going to slide those toes back behind you. And then see what it's like to come onto the top of the toes. And then a couple of times, can you tap those toes on the floor? So that means you're very ever so slightly picking them up. And then with the toes on the floor, you can see what's it like to straighten that back knee a bit more. And that sometimes makes my foot cramp. So if it's the same for you, don't overdo it. And then from here, this movement takes us on to this one, where we try and catch the top of the foot. But it might be for some of you that to do this, you need the wall beside you. Yeah. So how easy or hard is it to catch the top of your foot or your trouser leg? So that's another option. So just really seeing on this side. And you can maybe do it a couple of times. Maybe come back down. And then again on the same side, if you were just going to catch the top of your foot or your trouser leg, how's the easiest way for you to do that? Is it sliding your foot back? Or is it lifting your knee up towards you? So there are different ways you can catch the top of your foot. So try again. And it's almost It's almost trying to do it without thinking about it too much. But definitely it might be helpful. I'm moving here just to have something under your fingertips. So you can think, okay, I'm just going to catch the top of my foot. How can I make that easy? Good. And then if you have caught the top of your foot or your trouser leg, just this time bring your hand to your breastbone and have a couple of breaths. We will move on to side 2 in a moment. So just a couple of breaths. And we settle there. Okay, and then come down and have a shake out, because we've been standing on that leg probably longer than any of us enjoy. And we'll do the other side now. So settle your feet down, hip width apart and parallel. Start to shift your weight onto the other foot now and come up onto the ball of the foot you just stood on. And then you're going to slide those toes back behind you. And the first thing is to then try what it's like to come onto the top of your toes and to maybe tap your toes on the floor. So you're ever so slightly picking them up off the floor. And then the one that I find rather challenging, straightening that back knee a bit more. What happens if you do that? Can you still feel your body over your standing foot? And then what would it be like to let the foot come off the floor and try to catch the top of your foot? And so again, it might be at this point that you want to come and have a bit of wall beside you, because I want you to try 2 or 3 times. How's the easiest way for you to catch the top of your foot or your trouser leg? What's the easiest movement? Does your knee need to come up in front of you, or is it bringing the foot up behind you? There really isn't a right or a wrong way here. It's about trying to do it in a way that's easiest for us, which will be most comfortable. And then your other hand could come onto your breastbone, and you could just have a couple of breaths here. And as I said, we'll be coming back to this a bit later and taking it a little bit further. Okay, come down, have a little bit of a shake out. Good, shaking arms and legs out. And we're going to do a little bit of a mini tree pose. So perhaps just watch me for a moment. If I come further forwards on my mat. So the 2 things we're going to do is we're going to come to here where our foot's on our ankle. You could have a few toes on the floor. And then we're going to cross our ankles and your toes come onto the floor and the outside of the other foot. And then you could even bring your toes to stand on the outer edge of your foot. So it's sort of 3 different little mini tree pose variations. I'll talk you through these. So just settle down, have a drink of water. Settle down, have a drink of water if you need it. Feet hip width apart and parallel. So you're going to stand on the same foot you stood on first last time. So shifting your weight onto that foot, coming up onto the ball of the other foot. And so the first thing we're doing is this little turning the knee out slightly, keeping the pelvis facing forwards. Our foot's going to come onto our standing leg ankle. You could have no toes on the floor, or you could have a toe or 2. And then what's it like to cross your ankles? So that foot comes in front of the standing leg foot and you've got some toes on the floor on the outside of your standing foot. And you could then try from there, what's it like to bring your toes onto your standing foot? So you've now only got one foot on the floor, and you could bring your hands into prayer pose for a couple of breaths. Good. Lovely. Come down, have a little shake out. So our standing balances are all about this intention to settle, to find some stability, to maybe find some focus, some quiet, but the reality doesn't always sort of live up to that, and we just have to be kind to ourselves. So let's try side two. So shift your weight onto your other foot, come onto the ball of the foot you just stood on, and then that foot is going to come onto your ankle, either completely off the floor or with a toe or two on the floor. At this point, you could bring your hands into prayer pose. It might help you feel more steady. And then you're going to cross that ankle in front of the other one. Have your toes on the floor to start with, because that's going to again help with the steadiness. And then if and when you feel a bit steadier, then bring your toes to stand on your foot, sort of on the outside edge of your foot. Good. And see if you can have another couple of breaths there. And then come down, have a little bit of a shake out. We've got one more balance to do. And Elaine, I was just thinking, I think your ear thing might make balancing harder. So I'm just aware that that might be the case. So one last thing we're going to do. So coming back, feet hip width apart and parallel. So there's two parts to this. The first one is shifting your weight onto your standing foot. The other one is just going to do this sort of drawing a little circle with your toes in front of your standing leg, because we're going to be crossing this top leg over the bottom leg. So that's part one. Now part two is for this balance, the bottom leg, the standing leg, needs to be bent. So maybe come back to here and bend your standing knee a little bit. Now it does help to have your gaze looking down when you're bending your standing knee. That can make the knee more comfortable. And then see what it's like to cross that other leg over the standing leg. And again, you could have your big toe on the floor or no toes. And you could bring your hands into prayer pose for a breath or two. And just make sure your knee, particularly you, Linda, with the knee issue, the knee is happy in this. It's more work in the muscles when our knee is bent. So we won't stay there too long. We'll come out. We'll have a little bit of a shake out. So again, yeah, standing on a bent knee is very different feeling. Let's just take a moment before we do our last side of our last balance. Take a moment in standing, maybe closing your eyes, feeling your feet on the floor. Maybe swaying a little bit to the right and to the left, feeling yourself in standing. And you can settle in the center. We can feel, hopefully we feel quite steady with 2 feet on the ground. We're trying to sense our skeleton. So when we come to balance, it's about finding our bones. But interestingly enough, when we bend our standing knee, so you can open your eyes now. You can keep your standing leg straight to start with and just do this sort of drawing this little circle where your leg you just stood on is crossing in front of the leg you are standing on. It doesn't have to be a huge circle. This is crossing over movement. And we're thinking about the knee crossing as well, not just the ankle like in tree. And then come back to here and bend your standing knee. So this does become a bit more about the muscles around the hip joint and the knee when we bend the knee. And then cross your leg over. We're crossing the knees, maybe your big toes on the floor, maybe not, hands in prayer pose. My knees are a little bit grumbly today with being bent. So if that's the case for you, don't push it. Just have a couple of breaths here. Letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave you. Yeah, Yes, well done. And then come out and have a little bit of a shake out. So we're going to come down through a forward bend and dog pose onto hands and knees. And we're going to do some things on hands and knees. So come to the back of your mat now. And just take a moment to settle yourself down here, because we're going to be starting with our hands in prayer pose and taking our arms up and doing a little bit of that reaching that we did. So I'll come actually here to the back of my mat here. So settle down, just have a moment, see if you can feel your breath in your body. Have a look down at your feet are hip width apart and parallel. And then let a breath come in, and as you exhale, take your arms down and then up. Let the breath come in, drop your shoulders down, and just one last time, do a little bit of reaching. Reaching up through one arm and the other. Your weight shifts into your reaching arm, leg, side. Very nice. And then from here, you're going to sweep down into a forward bend. You can pause with your elbows on your thighs. You can bend your knees as much as you like. Big exhalation. And then from this forward bend, you're going to walk your hands forwards into dog pose. So bend your knees until you can bring your hands onto the floor, your palms onto the floor. And then walking forwards into dog pose. When you arrive in dog pose, we're just going to have a few breaths here. You can bend one knee, bend the other, a bit of walking on the spot. And then from dog pose, we're going to fold down into child pose. So let your knees come onto the floor, let your hips fold back over your heels, let your forehead rest down and your elbows. So just see how that feels. And if it doesn't feel really particularly comfortable being in child pose now, you could always be on your hands and knees and just do a little bit of rocking forwards and back. Otherwise, if you feel comfortable in child pose, have a few breaths here, just letting yourself settle onto the floor. So we're going to be doing a little sequence on our hands and knees with a few variations. So most of the movements are going to be, I think all of them are going to be familiar, but I'm just putting them together in a different order. So when you're ready, come on to hands and knees. So settle yourself so you've got your hands under your shoulders and your knees under your hips. And the first thing you're going to do is lengthen one leg back behind you and tuck those toes under. And then do the same thing on the other side. Lengthen the other leg back behind you. So it's just nice after being in child pose to let the back of each knee open. It's a bit like doing half a plank pose. And then settle yourself with both knees on the floor. Have a look. So this distance between your hands and your knees should be the length of your body. So just check that your hands are not too close to your knees and not too far away. That's it. And then start to do your cat movements. So start rounding your back to the ceiling and dipping your spine down to the floor. So keep these movements comfortable. We're thinking now about starting to get the spine moving a little bit. So we round the back to the ceiling, the head hangs, the belly gathers up. We dip the spine down to the floor. We let our belly soften. So a few more times, rounding and dipping, and I'll come and have a little look at you. Don't let that put you off. So good, rounding and dipping. Just keeping it comfortable, keeping it easy. Very nice, lovely. And if you're lucky enough to share your home with a cat, then you know how flexible cats are. And they can move their spines in all these amazing positions completely effortlessly. Okay, We're going to come on into plank pose, but I think it might be helpful just to sit back for a moment. So either sit back in kneeling or come into up kneeling if that's better for you. Wherever you are, shake your hands out. Because obviously in plank pose, we've got quite a lot of weight through our hands. So give your hands a shake out. You're then going to come back onto hands and knees. Make sure you're towards the front of your mat, so you've got enough room to lengthen your leg out. So in plank pose, we're keeping our shoulders over our wrists. We're lengthening one leg out and then we're adding the other leg in. And we're trying to feel that long, straight line of plank. We're looking down at the floor just ahead of our fingertips. And we're trying our best to breathe. It's not that easy here. A couple of breaths. And then let your knees come back to the floor. Good, well done. And we're going to bring one hand forwards between the feet into lunge. So it might be that you step one foot forward between the hands. I might have said one hand forwards between the feet, didn't I? Sorry, 1 foot forwards between the hands. And it might be that you could then walk your back. If you tuck your back toes under, you might be able to walk your back leg away a little bit more, keeping your knee. So you want to keep your knee over your heel in your front leg for your lunge. And you can be on the flat of your hands or your fingertips or your knuckles. Just having a few breaths. So lunge is all about this strong stretch through the front of the back leg thigh. Basically, that's the main reason why we're doing this. Have another couple of breaths here. And we can ease out of lunge by rocking in the opposite direction. So untuck your back toes and then rock back a bit like this. That's it. So the back knee bends and the front leg straightens out. Good. And then come back onto hands and knees and swap sides. So you're going to bring the other foot forwards between your hands. And yeah, settle here. So again, we're trying to have our knee directly over our heel in that front foot. And then if it's possible, we tuck our toes under in our back foot and we walk that back leg away a bit more. And then we have a few breaths here, just trying to feel that we're giving the weight of the pelvis to the ground. So here it's about this feeling of the front of the body opening, and it's specifically the front of the pelvis, the front of the back leg thigh. So usually lunge feels fairly intense, so there's something very clear to focus our attention on that strong stretch and exhaling to help it release. Now from here, we're going to come on into dog pose. So you could come back onto hands and knees. It might be quite nice actually to ease back in your lunge. And then that's it. So that rocking back, looking back, and then decide. You could come back into lunge and go straight from lunge into dog. Or you could come onto hands and knees, plant your hands down, tuck your toes under, rock your hips back and up into dog. And I'll just have a little look at everyone in dog. So have a few breaths in dog pose, very nice. Bending your knees as much as you like. So in dog, we're trying to get the work out of the arms and into the legs, which normally means bending the knees. Maybe one knee at a time. That's it. So you're walking on the spot. And your feet are a generous hip width apart. And then from dog pose, you're going to fold back down into child pose. Take the weight off your arms, let your elbows come to rest on the floor, let your forehead rest down. Let a breath come in, let a breath leave you. And then in child pose, can you reach your arms forwards on the floor? So your elbows come off the floor and you plant your hands down. And then come up onto hands and knees with your hands in this position. So you should end up in quite a long hands and knees. Yeah, so your hands are actually further forwards than your shoulders. And then what you're going to do is just start to rock your pelvis forwards. Yeah, so this is just these sort of beginnings of coming towards face up dog. And as you do this, you might think, okay, I need my hands a little bit further forwards, or maybe my hands are too far forwards. And we're going to do face up dog in some other ways in a moment. So you don't have to go particularly far with this unless it feels quite easy. So when we come into face up dog, so again, if you're lucky enough to have a dog, the dogs do this usually when they get up from sleeping, they'll do both their dog movements. Okay. And then let's from here rock back into child pose once more. And just have a couple of breaths in child. So let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. And we're going to do that whole little sequence again with some slightly different movements added in. So from child pose, come back onto hands and knees again. So settle yourself. So this is a normal hands and knees position. You want your hands under your shoulders and your knees under your hip joints. It's like you're at a little table. And then lengthen one leg out behind you, tuck your toes under. Let the back of that knee open. And then do the same thing on the other side. Lengthen the other leg out behind you, tuck your toes under, let the back of the knee open. Good. And then settle on hands and knees. And we're going to do a little bit, Sarah, of what I call tail wagging. So you're going to imagine, maybe close your eyes, imagine you have a tail like a dog or a tail like a fish. And you're swishing, if you're a fish, you're swishing your tail from side to side. And if you're a dog, you're wagging your tail from side to side, not maybe particularly quickly. So your pelvis starts to move towards the right and to the left. And maybe specifically towards the right shoulder and the left shoulder. But it's really helpful to just to imagine that you have a tail. And we're doing tail wagging. We could also do our tail wagging using our lower legs. So why don't you swing your lower legs over to the right and then look down the right side of your body towards your lower legs. So keep your knees where they are and then swing your lower legs over to the left side of your body and look down towards your feet. And do that slowly a few times from side to side. I have to go slowly or I feel dizzy. So the lower legs swing over to one side and we look down the side of our body. And then the lower legs swing over to the other side and we look down the side of our body. That's it, very nice, beautiful. And you obviously could do that more quickly without moving your head. So swing the lower legs quite quickly from side to side, the little fishes one. So the lower legs swing and they take the pelvis with it. And then let's just sit back again onto the heels in up or down kneeling. So whichever's better, and shake your hands out because we're going to come on into plank pose again. And we just need to, not overdo it in the wrists. Quite nice to do this one as well. Bring the backs of the hands together. That's it. And then towards the front of your mat, place your hands down onto the floor, shoulders over your wrists. You're going to lengthen one leg back behind you, add the other leg in. See how it feels to have a few breaths in plank pose. Not the easiest place to breathe, as I probably always say. Make sure you're looking slightly forward of your fingers to keep your neck in line with the rest of you. And then, yes, when you've had enough, come down, let the knees come to the floor. Step one foot forwards again, between your hands into lunge. Now, this time in lunge, we're going to walk the foot a bit more out to the side so you can bring both hands onto the inside. That's it. And have a few breaths there and just see how that feels. So your back toe could be tucked under or flat, back toes. And you can be leaning down through your arms, a bit like plank pose if the arms are okay with that. And just have another couple of breaths. If you really want to give yourself a stretch through the front of that back leg thigh, you could tuck your toes under and let your back knee come off the ground. It's not particularly pleasant though, so you might not want to do that for very long. Then bring that back knee back down. Walk your foot back over so it's back between your hands. And then ease back out of this lunge again, like we did on the other side. And then swap sides. Okay, so come back onto hands and knees, bring the other foot forwards in your lunge. So it might be that you start off knee over your heel. You might walk the back leg away a little bit more. Have a couple of breaths here. And then it's the walking the foot out to the side. And seeing how that feels, having a couple more breaths in lunge. Again, if you want to, if you so wish, tucking your back toes under, letting your back knee come off the ground. Having a couple of breaths there, so it's that slightly stronger stretch. Good. And then let that back knee come down. Walk your front foot towards the centre. Untuck your back toe and then ease back. Looking back towards your back foot. And then once more, we're going to come on into dog pose. So that could be from lunge. You could come here, you could tuck your back toe under, which I will do this time, or you could come to hands and knees. So if you're going into dog pose from lunge, exhaling, sinking into your hands, stepping that front foot back. It might end up as a rather long dog, so in which case walk your feet forwards a little bit. And then in dog pose, bending one knee, bending the other, easing into your legs as much as possible. And from dog pose, folding down into child pose whenever you're ready for a couple of quiet breaths. Letting the weight of your body settle on the ground, your forehead, your elbows. Feel the weight of your pelvis settling over your heels. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. And again from child pose, reach your arms forwards with your elbows off the ground and plant your hands on the ground so that you can come up onto hands and knees in this longer hands and knees. So where we were going from hands and knees to face up dog. This time we're going to try a couple of ways that will be really familiar to some of you. So one is to start to move your pelvis from side to side. So your tail wagging movement to take you back into child pose and forwards into face up dog. So you're swinging your hips from side to side. And as you do so, you can move back into child and you can move forwards into face up dog. So see how that feels, because that's quite a nice way of sneaking ourselves into face up dog by this side to side movement of the pelvis. We can see how face up dog feels. Maybe do one more face up dog like that, and then we'll just do slightly different face up dog, which some of you know. So from this face up dog, maybe just sit back in kneeling, up or down, give your hands a shake out. And then we're going to do face up dog, which most of you know, but watch me if you're not sure, where we do more of a rounded movement like cats. So we tuck our toes under, we round our back to the ceiling, we rock our hips back over our heels. We maybe slide the hands forwards a little bit here, and then we travel into face up dog, really rounding our back. And it's only when the shoulders are over the wrists that we let the pelvis go and we look forwards. So we could try that one. So long hands and knees, tucking your toes under, rounding your back to the ceiling, rocking your hips back over your heels. Look back, let a breath come in, And then travel forwards the same way, rounding your back, looking back between your feet until your shoulders are right over your hands. And you let your pelvis go. Now, it might be, I didn't say to slide your hands forwards. We'll try that this time. So reverse that movement. Start to rock back. Tuck your toes under, all the way back into child pose with your elbows off the floor. Now, it might be you could slide your hands a little bit further forwards here to give you a bit more length than face up dog. And then round your back to the ceiling again, traveling forwards. And only when your shoulders are over your hands do you then let your pelvis go, untuck your toes and look forwards. You can do that once more if you like, and I'll come have a little look. So you reverse that movement, you rock back, you tuck your toes under, you round your back. And then you come forwards, that's it, rounding your back in that same way, beautiful, really nice, really nice. And then when the shoulders are over the hands, we let the pelvis go, we untuck the toes. The pelvis is hanging and this gives us this nice chance to lengthen out through the lower back. Good, very nice. And then from here, we're just going to have a little breather. You could be in child pose. You could be in kneeling, or if anyone's knee, Linda, I'm thinking of you, if your knee needs a little chance to be long, you could lie on your belly. Okay, so child pose kneeling or lying on your belly. I was just thinking, oh, it's rather nice lying on the belly. So if you like lying on your belly, it's quite a nice place to have a bit of a breather. And wherever you are, it's taking this opportunity to focus on your breathing. So let your body settle on the ground. And then noticing where you feel your breath in your body. And so there's no right or wrong about it. It's about feeling our breath wherever we feel it most clearly. Feeling the expansion of the inhalation, our body widens as we receive the in-breath. And the emptying out and narrowing of the exhalation. And also as we exhale, maybe that's when we can soften, we can settle, we can let go of tension. Let's have 3 more cycles of breath here. Good. And then wherever you are, you're going to slowly make your way around. So, and if you've had your knees bent, we're going to come into sitting. If you've had your knees bent, you might like to lean back on your hands and lengthen your legs out for a moment. We're actually going to come to cobbler pose. But if you've not been lying on your belly, if you want to do this anyway, you could do. It's nice to have the legs long for a moment. So we're just going to do a little bit of working with a few sitting things and a little bit of breathing, and then we're going to come back and revisit our balances. So first of all, come to cobbler pose, and Linda, just sort of adapt as you need to because of your knee. So see how it feels to be in cobbler pose, and you can lean back on your arms as much as you like from here. We'll stay a little bit longer here in a moment, but what I'd like us to do now is come into pinwheels. So let one knee, doesn't matter which side, one knee comes on top of the other knee. So we're in this side sitting position. We can lean onto the arm on this side and then slide your top leg back. That's it. So this is pinwheel. And you might feel a bit lopsided. Can you do a little bit of circling? Circling and settling. Circling and settling. So here we're just, we're circling. We're probably noticing how this side, so I always think this is the back leg. So this side of our pelvis is probably not as settled on the floor as the other side. which is perfectly natural in this movement. What we're going to do is turn towards this leg, the knee that's going out to the side. So turn towards the leg that's going out to the side, and then we're going to fold over it. And at this point, the other buttock is probably going to come off the floor completely, which is absolutely fine. So fold down over that leg. And just rest your elbows on the floor if you can, or your hands or your forehead. It doesn't really matter. It's just about resting the weight of your body down onto that thigh and settling down onto the floor for a few breaths. Letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave you. And then slowly walk your hands in towards you so you come back up into sitting. Now slide this back leg on top of the front leg again. That's it, side sitting. And then open out into cobbler pose and just see how cobbler pose feels. So I always found it was a little bit easier after that on one side. Let's do the other side and then maybe stay a little bit longer in cobbler pose. So come to here. Good. Lean onto this arm, slide that top leg back. That's it. A little bit of circling here. See how this side feels. So it might feel a bit easier, it might feel a bit more challenging. You can circle in one direction and the other. So these circling movements, I just find they're very soothing and settling. And just like we did on the other side, we're going to turn towards this thigh that's going out to the side. We're going to fold the weight of our body down over that leg. And we're going to settle for a few quiet breaths. And see how that feels. Letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave you. And then slowly, it's always a shame to come out of pinwheel, but slowly walking the hands back in. And then bringing that back leg on top, the front leg, opening your legs out into cobbler pose. And let's just see how cobbler pose stays. Yeah, that looks really nice now. So we could do a little bit of holding on to the feet or the ankles or leaning back on the hands, and a bit of rocking from side to side. This is always where it's a definite advantage to have a bit of padding around the bottom area. It makes it much more comfortable. That's it, very nice. Rocking from side to side. Oh, so it's possible to rock all the way over onto our backs, but maybe we won't do that right now. It's Thursday evening, people are very, very keen on that one, Sarah. Join them. And then the other one is just this leaning. So if we leave the legs and the feet here, can we lean our body one way? We could add our arm in. So it's these little side lengthening movements again. So really quite nice to sort of to be stretching through the side of the waist and feeling heavy pelvis, heavy legs, hopefully. Yeah, so like all of these ones, I always lose count going from side to side. Now, you've probably had enough of those, so you could now lean back and lengthen your legs out to give the legs a little bit of a roll. Now, I'd like you to be able to sit comfortably. We're going to do a little bit of breathing, a little bit of kapala bhati breathing. So some of you are familiar with this, and don't worry if you're not. So you're going to sit however is most comfortable. So it could be cross-legged, it could be kneeling, it could be with a cushion to sit on. If you want to sit with your legs straight, you could have a wall or a sofa or a bed, as I know we're in various rooms behind you. So if you want to sit with your legs long and straight, it's really nice, but have something to support your spine. So it really, it doesn't matter how you're sitting. It's about being able to be comfortable in sitting. I'm just checking you can see my belly. So, yes, maybe if you're sitting with your legs long, Sarah. Oh yeah, it's beautiful. Sorry, I thought you had your ankles crossed. No, it's my bad vision. Now, Kapalabhati, we're going to bring our hand on our belly. So what we're trying to do in Kapalabhati is to connect our breathing with our belly, and it connects our mind with our belly as well. So let's do it first of all through the mouth. So you're going to blow out as if you're blowing out a candle, and try to feel that your belly moves back as you blow out. And then try to do the same through your nose. You're going to blow out through your nose. And if you're at all hay fever, you might need a tissue. You're going to blow out through your nose and see if you can feel your belly move back. And I just would like us to try doing 2 cycles of 5 Kapalabhati breaths. If you're not sure about doing it through your nose, do it through your mouth. You can choose. We're going to do 4 little short, sharp out breaths. The 5th one is a long one. The idea is that we relax our belly in between each little out breath, so the in breath comes in automatically. So let's try 5. Remember, the 5th one is a long one. So let a breath come in, and then either blowing out through your nose or your mouth. And then just have a couple of normal breaths. So we'll try that once more, because we're going to take this back into standing. Kapalabhati means shining skull, so it's actually a very good way to wake ourselves up, as well as everything else. So try once more, either through the mouth or through the nose. Let a breath come in first of all. Okay, let's come up into standing and see how it feels to do that in standing. And one of the things about Kapalabhati breath is it also is, it brings us in touch with our belly and maybe just livens up this whole area. And I wanted us to come back to our standing balances with this focus on the belly as the centre of ourselves. It's a centre of ourselves. So just come into standing, feet hip width apart and parallel, and bring your hands onto your belly. So we're going to try maybe another 5 of those little breaths, either through the nose or through the mouth. So let a breath come in. Good. And then what I'd like you to do is you're just going to decide which foot you're going to stand on. And we're going to come back into this balancing movement where we're catching the top of our foot. And the other hand is going to start off on our belly. So we have this awareness in our belly. So with one hand on your belly, so whichever foot you're standing on, that hand needs to be on your belly. And so you're going to shift your weight onto your standing foot, however works for you to catch the other foot or the trouser leg. You're going to do that. And then just have a couple of breaths with your hand on your belly. Good. And then from here, you could bring your hand up to your breastbone, but can you keep some awareness at your belly? And then you can keep take your arm up to the ceiling. Still have that awareness of your belly, letting your shoulder drop. Have another breath or 2 here. And maybe bring the hand back down to the breastbone and then back to the belly. And then come down and have a little bit of a shake out. And then look at your feet, settle your feet down. Bring the other hand onto your belly and shifting your weight onto your standing leg. So just have this your awareness focused on your belly as you start to catch the top of the other foot or the trouser leg. And as you settle in your balance, keep your attention focused in the belly. The belly as the centre of ourselves. Your hand can come up to your breastbone. And your arm can come up to the ceiling. Let the shoulder drop. And just see how it feels to have a few more breaths in this balance. And even though our hand is no longer on our belly, we keep gathering our awareness into our belly as our centre. The hand can come back to the breastbone. The hand can come onto the belly. Good. And then come down and have a little bit of a shake out. Now we're going to come on into, well, let's do a forward bend first of all, and then we're going to come on into tree pose again and revisit a slightly different tree. So feet hip width apart, just let yourself roll forwards, let your head hang, let your arms hang. So we need to give our brain a little moment to relax in between the balances. And then let a breath come in, and as you exhale, sink down into your heels and roll up into standing. So maybe I'll just show you first of all. So in this tree pose, you could do any of the feet we did before. Foot on your ankle, foot crossing over. You could, if you like, to bring your foot a bit higher up your leg. Once you've got your foot organised, I'd then like you to have one hand on your belly, one hand on your lower back, really focusing your awareness into your belly. From here, you could then bring your arms up if you feel steady, and then we'll finish with the hands in prayer pose, okay? I'll talk you through all of that, you don't need to remember, but what you do need to do first of all is just decide how you're going to have your foot in tree pose. So you're coming back onto your first standing leg, and you could have your foot on your ankle, you could bring your heel so it's just in that indentation above your knee, or you could bring your foot right up to the top of your thigh, and then yes, one hand on the belly, one hand on the back of the pelvis. Gathering the awareness into this part of the body, this centre of ourselves. So hand quite low on the belly, it's even beneath the belly button. And then from here, if you feel steady, what would it be like to take the arms up, all the way up? Let the shoulders drop. Good. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. Keep feeling the pelvis and the belly in your awareness. And then the hands could gather into prayer pose at the breastbone. Keep feeling the belly, keep feeling the breath. Very, very nice. Come down, have a little shake out. Settle yourself for a moment in standing. So looking at the feet, planting the feet down hip width apart and parallel, and maybe closing your eyes for a moment and just feeling yourself in standing. So it always feels quite interesting after doing one side, we maybe feel a little bit unbalanced. And then opening your eyes, starting that process of bringing yourself into the balance on the second side. So wherever your foot is going to come to, organising yourself from the waist down. And then a hand on the front and the back of the pelvis. Doesn't matter which hand. Good. And this gathering our awareness into our centre. So the hara, it's sometimes known as, the belly as the centre of ourselves. And from here, keeping the awareness at the belly, we could bring our arms up. So how does it feel to have the arms up, the shoulders relaxed, but still with our awareness at the belly? Letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave. We can gather the hands into prayer pose at the breastbone. And then coming down whenever you're ready, having a little shake out. Now, I just want us to, we're going to come into our eagle balance in a moment. We're just going to revisit our kapala bhati breath. And for eagle balance, we have these bent knees. So I'd like you to have your feet a generous hip width apart. And we're going to bend our knees and just see what it's like to do our 5 kapala bhati breaths here with our knees bent. And it's helpful when we bend the knees to look down a little bit. So we're bending the knees, we're dropping the tailbone, let a breath come in. Five little breaths. Now, very briefly, what would it be like keeping your hands on your belly to shift your weight over one bent knee and cross the other leg over it? We'll just do that very briefly. Good. And then we'll try the same thing on the other side. So bring that leg down, keep the knee bent, cross the other leg over. Okay, very good. It's just quite helpful in this way. I didn't say to have one hand on the back of the pelvis, but quite often we come into this balance because we're bending the knee. Sometimes we stick our bum out a bit and we're trying to keep the tailbone dropping. Now, we're going to do our eagle balance, but I'd like you to add the arms in. So, you're going to take your arms wide and you're going to give yourself a hug with your right arm on top. And then, yes, come into this one that we did earlier. So we've got our arms, that's it, our arms wrapped around each other, if we can. If this is challenging, you can always just give yourself a hug. And then, we're going to bend both knees. We're going to be standing on the right foot. So you've bent both knees, and then you're going to cross your left leg over your right leg. And see how that feels. And so keep aware of your pelvis. Can you let your tailbone drop? You could have your big toe on the floor, that's fine. Can you let your shoulders drop? Can you not be bending forwards? Good. Very nice. Not one to stay in for a long time. You all look wonderful. So coming down. Oh, having a little shake out. Arms and legs. And then settle down, feet hip width apart and parallel. Take your arms wide. Give yourself a hug this time with your left arm on top. So there's lots of ways we can do this. Quite often we'll balance and then bring our arms in, but at the moment I'm finding this a bit easier. So on into your eagle arms, and then bending both knees, keeping your shoulders over your hips, and you're going to cross the right leg over the left now and see how it feels to have a few breaths in this balance. Dropping the shoulders, dropping the tailbone. If you can settle, awareness in your belly. Very well done. Come out. Oh, have a good shake out. And then let yourself fold into one last forward bend and maybe stay here for a few more breaths than we usually do. So how does it feel to be in forward bend? Sinking into the heels, letting the head go, letting the arms go. Bend your knees as much as you like. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. Feel your head is heavy. That's it. Feel the weight is really in your heels. Good. You can always hold your elbows, Sarah, if that's, if you don't want your hands on the floor. Yeah, not just Sarah, anyone could do that if you like. Feel one more cycle of breath move through you. Feel the breath come in, feel the breath leave you, and then you can roll up into standing. And we are just about to lie down, as you haven't done any lying down still, not very much. But before we do so, just do this lovely, loose, easy, swinging movement. Let the arms swing from side to side. You can, I always have to slap my hands onto my body because I do this, because it wakes me up a bit. And then your You're going to make your way, however you like, into lying down on your back. We are going to do a few movements here, but first of all, you're just going to let yourself arrive and settle and breathe. Yes, and if you want anything warmer on, then now would be a good time, because then you don't have to get up again. And so settling down onto your back. And just lie however you're most comfortable. So it could be with your legs long, it could be with your knees bent. And how does it feel? So how does it feel to lie down? What do you notice? How much can you let your body, how heavy can you let your body feel as you rest on the ground? Maybe bring your hands to the front of your body and feel your body responding to your breathing. The breath flowing in, the breath flowing out. I'm just going to do some quite simple movements lying down, things that we often do to start with in standing. The very first thing I'd like you to do is to feel your head on the ground. Feel the weight of your head. And then start to let your head roll a little bit to the right and a little bit to the left, keeping it very easy and comfortable. So we're easing out the back of your neck. If in doing this, the back of your neck feels that it could benefit with lengthening out a little bit, you can take your hands and interlink your fingers around the back of your head and lift up your head a little bit and gently lengthen out the back of your neck. And then place your head back on the floor again. So I know for myself that that sort of base of the skull, back of the neck, is an easy place to hold tension. And then maybe come back to a little bit more rolling of the head to the right and to the left. And if your legs are long, you're going to bend your knees and stand your footprints on the floor. Take a moment to feel the contact of your footprints on the ground, the back of your pelvis on the ground. And then start to let your knees tilt to the right and to the left. That's it, very nice. So just a little bit of whatever feels comfortable for you. So as your knees tilt to the right and to the left, the weight is going to rock across the soles of your feet, and you can let that happen. So the weight will rock to the outer edge of one foot and the inner edge of the other foot. Just keep it comfortable. And just keep going with that movement. So these rocking movements can be very sort of calming and soothing. Help us to settle. So perhaps once, twice more to each side with your knees. And then settle in the center. And you can either keep your knees bent or you can lengthen your legs out. We're going to do a little rocking movement for the upper back. So you're going to bring your arms up and interlink your fingers over your chest. You're making a big O shape. So imagine you're holding a beach ball on your chest. That's it. Imagine you've got a big beach ball. You want to have it this shape as round as possible. If it's a beach ball, good. Interlinking your fingers. Can you then start to rock across your upper back, keeping your circle circular. That's it. Let your head rock in the same direction as your arms. But keep an eye out. If your beach ball starts to go a bit squishy, then you might be going a bit too far. So we're just trying to rock a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left across the upper back, with our fingers interlinked, letting our head roll in the same direction as our arms are rocking. What lovely circular circles we've all got here. Good. So we're giving our upper back a bit of a massage here. So it might be that you encounter lots of little knotty tight places, and just keep rocking. It doesn't have to be a big movement, to the right and to the left. Whenever your arms get tired, you can rest them down. So yes, do rest them down for a moment. Sometimes we don't even know when our arms are getting tired because we're so used to doing so much with them. Let a breath come in, let a breath leave you. Feel the weight of your body settled on the ground. And then bending your knees, once again standing your feet on the floor. Feeling the footprints on the floor, feeling the back of the pelvis on the floor. Come to tilting your knees to the right and to the left again. That's very nice. Yes, just seeing how does that feel. So sometimes we've done a bit of that rocking across our upper back. It can feel a bit more fluid, a bit easier to let the knees tilt to the right and to the left. It doesn't necessarily mean they go further, but it might just all feel a bit more comfortable and fluid. You could also see what's it like to pause in the center and take your feet a bit wider, so your feet are as wide as the narrow edge of your mat. And then carry on with that, rocking your knees from side to side and seeing how that feels. Linda, if that aggravates your knee, then keep your feet hip width apart. Good. So see how this feels. Now, for some of you, if this feels comfortable, you could let your knees go all the way down to the floor on one side. If you have a cushion or a pillow to hand, you might want to slide that under one knee, but you might find it's comfortable to let the knees go all the way down towards the floor. It's a bit like you're back in pinwheel, but on your back. And if you are leaving your knees down there for a breath or two, you can roll your head in the opposite direction and keep that shoulder very settled on the ground. Yeah, so a couple of breaths. You do this on both sides for a couple of breaths. Very nice. Yes, that looks lovely. You can come back to the center. You can bring your feet back so they're hip width apart. We're going to do one last little rocking thing and then we'll settle quietly. So for this one, with your feet hip width apart, give yourself a hug like we did in standing before we came. Oh no, keep your feet on the floor. Sorry, this always gets confusing. Keep your feet on the floor, but cross your arms over your chest. So it's an arm only hug. And then you're going to start to tilt. Your knees and your elbows and your head are all going to rock to the right and then all rock to the left. So we're rocking across the back of our body. So let the elbows, let the head, and that, yeah, so everything rocks to the right and then everything rocks to the left. Very nice. So this is a really nice way to give yourself a bit of a massage, rolling from side to side across the back of your body. Keep it easy, keep it comfortable. Yeah, it's so interesting watching you all because everyone's moving at a different pace. Everyone's moving a different, speed. So if You could try going a little bit more slowly, a little bit more quickly. You could just stick with the pace you found if you're enjoying that. Lovely. And then when you come back to the center, you can uncross your arms. Maybe a couple of things you could do now. You can lengthen uncross your arms. You can lengthen your legs out on the ground. You can also fold your knees into your chest and give yourself that sort of hug now. And you can also take your legs up to the ceiling and give them a shake out, which is always, yes, and you can add your arms in, which is always a nice thing to do. Well, not always for everyone, but a lot of us. And then you're just going to settle down either with your legs long or your knees bent. So we're just going to settle down and settle with our breathing. And yeah, blankets are good if you need them, anything to keep you warm. You can have your hands resting on your belly or by your sides. In fact, actually, I'd quite like you to have your hands on your belly to come back to this focus we had in our second period of standing, of gathering our awareness into the belly or the hara, which is not a yogic term. I'm not sure where it comes from. I think some sort of Eastern medicine. So with the hands on the belly, the low belly beneath the belly button. So the belly feels the contact of the hands, the belly feels the warmth and weight of the hands. And the hands feel the belly perhaps responding to the breathing. And sometimes we may feel the belly moving a lot as we breathe, and other times it may not move so much. It's very personal. It varies day to day. But we're gathering our attention into the belly. And to our best ability, we're allowing the belly to soften, relax, be responsive to the breathing. We're having this sense of the belly as a centre of ourselves. There are lots of centres of ourselves, and the belly is one. We've just got another minute or so. We'll lie quietly, feeling the body resting on the ground. Gathering the attention to the belly, feeling the movement of the breath in the body. If you want to rest your hands somewhere other than on your belly, that's fine. And now, just for these last few moments, I'd like you to let your awareness expand outwards. So you're feeling your body, the whole of your body. Perhaps the points of the body in contact with the ground. Perhaps the air on your skin. I was reading in the book I was reading last night, someone said about feeling with their hands, and I thought, oh gosh, no, we can feel with the whole of our bodies. Maybe that's one of the things yoga gives us. This wider sense of awareness. You can let your awareness expand even beyond your body to an awareness of sounds around you, both near and more distant. And in a moment, I'm going to add to those sounds by ringing the singing bowl 3 times. So just carry on lying where you are until we reach the end of those 3 sounds. So thank you, everyone. Take your time. I'm just going to unmute you. There's no rush.